what could have been. And judging by the fact that the game is literally the most vaporware thing in existence, being an unreleased game on an unreleased console, I don't think we'll be seeing anything new for this version of D2.
Kikiyama. Si consultamos la wiki de Yumeniki, se nos informa de que este enigmático creador es tan oscuro que ni siquiera sabemos su sexo, o de si se trata de múltiples personas. Después de mover algunos hilos dentro
He stopped giving interviews and he disappeared completely. Perhaps he was just another victim caught in the fray of Konami. Maybe he's been exiled into the lower depths of the company, forced to make Metal Gear Panchico Machine.
Goddamn nigga, you too blind to see you got fans, nigga. Goddamn nigga, you too blind to see you got fans, nigga.
Patriots is dead was the main hook at the end of 2. Only it wasn't a hook. They were dead. There was nothing left to fight, and the rest of the message consisted out of live your life, Raiden, you play your allegory as bitch. Just live, go places, meet people, pass on what you know, do shit and leave it be. It couldn't have been any more clearer that the series was supposed to end then and there, and yet here we are. I guess it's good that the game doesn't retcon them back to life, as it instead opts to paint the AI of MGS2 as their living sentient legacy, so to say, as well as it revealing that it ain't the only one. And so, now, the bots control and script the entire world, with Snake en route to stop them and Liquid Ocelot en route to stop them. Only in like a bad way that'll create mass chaos, not in like the Snake and Otacon way. No, that'll only create mass chaos. There aren't really any good or bad guys at this point, just slightly differing interpretations of that thing the boss said. Shit's gray, pretty much, as is these two old bro dicks dicking their bro dicks together in one final bro dicking. A very tired, contrived, and vastly overblown dicking, where even the two oldest dicks show up in the end to passive-aggressively shatter the remaining dickage by urging Snake to once again stop and move on. Funny, innit, how most MGS games end with a message that either roughly or literally reads stop playing and do shit. Even the first two did, not to mention how in almost all of them, Snake is forced against his will. It's almost as if the team and its titular director behind this game are trying to tell us something. Though I'm far too busy looking forward to the new sequel to notice. Coming in hot like a pace-breaking machine, dumping exposition like a briefing screen, it's... Since MGS1, Kojima had a direct right-hand man. Hideo would say, I want the game to be this, and he would then reply with, well, this could be the reason for it being like that. And his reasons were always solid. His name was Tomokazu Fukushima. I've seen people argue that he is the true Metal Gear writer over Hideo Kojima simply because they were big baby butthurt by the series' its direction from here on out, but it ain't never that simple. They were a team, man. Fukushima would flesh out ideas while said ideas would still be Kojima's, making up, for instance, the minutia of why the big shell be there, or how Ocelot could be so endlessly cheeky, or how Big Boss could end up rough in a jungle. IMDb describes one of his main tasks as setting justification, which I couldn't have put any better. Dude would be responsible for many of the codec conversations, for example, as they're dense with lore and exposition. He'd get the cheeky deets down low from Hideo, pen down some bands, ping them over to Motosada Amori, the technical and military advisor, who could then fact-check, thus bringing in many of the real-world connections, like say those tiny little ships from MGS3 that were based on some old obscure blueprints no one else would have known about. Again, it's a team. With one hell of an ideas guy at the helm and one equally big dick-ass writer oiling up the gears. But now, that team has shattered. Fukushima still got credited in an early trailer for MGS4, but as to what happened between then and its actual release, no one knows. Other than that he must have fled the Konami gulag somehow. It is often said that he hated Konami itself and carried a lot of anarchic, anti-establishment ideas, and as his own profile states, he ain't too big on AAA game design either. Because of this, many consider him to be the true writer behind MGS2's crazy breakdown. And, I mean, he wrote the codex and most of the good shit happens within those, and the ideas shared certainly lined up with how he felt politically, so I can see why. In either case, MGS4 rolls back on that shit big time. And so, my guess is that either A, he wasn't happy with that and left, or B, he left because MGS4 became too corporately curated and that he took his themes and memes with him. Whichever happened, it's hard not to notice a stark shift in the quality of writing in the game's post-leave. Don't get me wrong, the Metal Gear story has always been kinda stupid, with crazy leaps in logic, bizarre twists, and even justifications that weren't always great. You could see that from the very second the good guy was actually the bad guy, only then he didn't die guy, cause you're actually a clone guy, but also not the only guy, or the secret guy, who is actually a good guy, making you the bad guy clone guy, only we're subverting that cause he's also a weirdo creepo guy against the kid guy fox clone guy, and then also the OG guy, aka the bad guy good guy clone guy, was actually just an okay guy, and the misunderstood guy with mommy issues, and all of that's ignoring Ocelot and his right hand. But even despite that, shit clicked, because the writers could ping ideas back and forth, with Fukushima and Kojima creating this type of reflectodome of poetic elegance and meaningful weight, making all of it a joy to read and listen to. MGS3 is a great example of this, with shit not only being really funny and charming, but also expertly tied into real life. You could believe the stupid fucking clone guy bullshit because it was contextualized very well, is what I'm saying. But, as I said, Fukushima gone, and with him, his context. We do have Shujo Murata, aka the spin-off Babel Boy, taking his place, and he also wrote for Acid, giving old Shinta a hand, now giving said hand to Kojima with his new job as a right-hand man job, and Shinta is also jobbing around still, actually applying his methodical, puzzle-esque, cheeky gameplayness to the entire third chapter. But yeah, if you've seen my Acid video, then you can probably guess where things are about to go. Limping across the world to take out some AI like a flaccid snake, sporting a mustache that spells restraining order like an old man, it's Old Snake. Otacon 2 helping him out, and even Raiden returns as a cyborg ninja, and Olga's kid, Sunny, who was barely even a thing in the OG MGS2, but a big thing in the digital novel, cause I guess that's how we're rolling now, is also part of the team as a science whiz kid. Neat. War is changing, by the way, because ID-tagged guns carrying ID-tagged weapons carrying ID-tagged guns, pretty much single-handedly keeping the old capitalist engine churning away. Oh, and Snake is ancient now because not only did Fox die potentially accelerate his aging, but also
the price of physical prodigy. Few more years and you'll be another dead clone of the old man. Our raw materials are vintage, brother. Big Boss was in his late 50s when they created his copies.
I don't think that that's how that works, though. Like, isn't everyone made from old people's DNA? You know, parents and stuff. It serves as a nice enough metaphor, though, at the very least. Two tired memes tearing at the seams of both themselves and the dev teams and the fragile logic that is this entire series. Cutscenes are the name of the game just as well. It kicks the game off with a solid 40 minutes before you get to play properly, and that's without counting the 30 fucking minutes of breathing that sets everything up. And I'm pretty sure it still holds a record for the longest continuous cutscene of any game, unless Eternal Sonata or Xeno or whatever passed it in the meantime. But when you do actually get to play, you might find it to be pretty fucking good. For one, you actually get the duck walk now, which should have been a thing way earlier, and the shooting is also modernized, or an attempt at doing so at least. You bring up gun with L1, but shoot with R1 because the two triggers still pull up menu as they did in MGS1. You can shoot properly in third person now, which also wasn't a thing before either, and to build off of MGS3, they even ripped off the camo system from Metal Gear Mobile, being that you can nab textures off of walls, so that's neat. Plus, it does have some systems of its own. You can customize guns and buy shit like ammo and parts on the fly like a wired-up guy. Also, you can look at all the items in big detail 3D, which is something all games should do. Please cater towards my fetish. And there's even a stress system, being that Snake old and war crazy, and so he can get a brain boo-boo requiring you to chill out on the floor with a nice flower. The real big difference, though, comes from the general pacing and level structure, being far less Lego-based and Snake Man's Guardmansy and much larger in scale. Essentially, applying the playful open-ended design of MGS3's bigger areas to rather densely layered linear corridors, with many and emergent guardmans and live set pieces placed along the way. Utilizing ladders, crawl spaces, rooftops, winding alleys, and all manner of sneaky cubbyhole and buildings, so you can approach each situation differently simply by allowing you to pass by or come at shit from various angles. Set pieces are no longer as simple as just some guys pacing back and forth. You have entire live battlefields to worry about now, with sniper choke points, tanks driving by, carpet bombings, and big artillery shoot bangs. A lot of people joke about MGS4 being one big cutscene, but I don't think they realize both how true and how much of an accomplishment that truly is, because in many ways it adopts a lot from the Half-Life school of thought, and that the conflict unfolds around you in the flesh. There'll be dudes running all over, bullets whizzing by, bombs being dropped, debris kicking up, mechs, tanks, rivaling factions, sneaking units, coups, and trench bangs. It is that jungle liveliness of 3 being used to breathe life into a dying warzone, with Snake being forced to wave through the chaos, which is a very different type of stealth than what we've seen in the games prior. A good area to highlight this with is this one small district early on in the Middle East. The only objective here is to simply reach the end, but how you get there is up to you. You see, this level has one big main road dominated by tanks and artilleries and local rebels fighting them, a network of hallways and storefronts, and a larger back street with snipers holding shit down. What you can do here is, say, sneak past the tanks and snipers, going through the alleys and apartment buildings, circumventing the whole thing, or you can use the mortars stationed above the shops to take out the tanks so that the rebels can pass, thus creating a big sneakable distraction further down road, or you could climb up through the apartments to get up on the rooftops and backstab the snipers so that the rebels there can loop back around to butt-fuck the artilleries and gank them from behind. Or, of course, just do this. It's an incredibly playful little toy box, and far from the only area that's like this, as there's also this big base that you can blow up, and the jungle trenches area that channels MGS3 proper, only now with squad included.
What are you doing here?
There's a giant mansion that blows the famous MGS3 house right out of the fucking water with its stupid amount of entryways, and really, honestly, the sheer variety of gameplay styles is really fucking admirable in general. Seeing that each chapter takes place elsewhere, and thus they'll all have some neat little gimmicks to call their own.
We did it! We did it!
But I did everything. The first 2 chapters is all about war, sneaking through the chaos, one in the urban and one in the nature, utilizing the unique features of both perfectly. I mean, I just showed you the rebel-based back alley boy banks, but in the forests you get to do shit like tracking footprints, hiding in trenches, and scaling giant hills to gain the upper hand in conflict. The third one is all about the sneak, non-combative classic sneak, in fact. Seeing Snake tailing motherfuckers, avoiding searchlights, and donning disguises as he waves through a city on lockdown past curfew. As stated, Shinta designed this one, and it is as clever of a subversion and evolution of new ideas as we'd come to expect. Like how the tailing involves a new and improved version of the booty-based Merrill walk from MGS1. Not to mention it being its own whole thing tonally. What with the trench-coated, young-faced Snake modeled after Snatchman, and the bloomy, classy, lighting-heavy fog rendering unique to this area. No guns, no noise, just you following a walk and a whistle in the dark. The fourth one after that is Old Moses, which is a big spooky sneaking challenge where you need to avoid all manner of scary mechs who can fuck you up fast upon spottage as they walk in clear patterns a la Lego because robot. It is by far the most MGS1-ass chapter in that sense, and fittingly so. Shit's great. Now, of course, these clearly defined focuses don't mean that these acts can't come with any variety otherwise. The second and third both have big action sequences for one, and Moses has one of the most craziest boss battles in the series so far, which says a lot given the end. And hopefully, as I was able to convey earlier, it is also implied that they're all as neatly segmented and paced as that one district. Honestly, on the gameplay front, MGS4 is truly excellent, which you don't hear many people say, likely because the cutscenes are so overbearing. But regardless, it truly is a successor to 3 in every way, being that it builds upon its foundations by increasing the scope and complexity, and by adding a thick whiff of cinematic flair to neatly round it off. Aside from just the sheer conflict happening around you at almost all times, the game will also use a lot more live visual storytelling than any of the past entries. The boss ladies that I have yet to properly get to, for example, are introduced not through a big fuck-off cutscene, but just by you seeing them fly around bombing shit. Then later, when you enter a rebel base, you can see one of their spazzing wings laid out on a table, taken as a type of war trophy, or maybe just so that they could figure out what the fuck. You can hear the boys speaking about it as well as you catch the others drilling plans and screaming in the distance. You really get to see the corporate brutality and overpriced numbers of the evil proxy mercs juxtaposing the poor, crying, dying, hungry rebels. I mean, they don't have fucking wings or tanks. They're just trying to defend their home. Similarly, the fact that the third level requires nothing but non-combative sneak says a lot about the state of the place, and I don't think I need to tell you what the old dilapidated glory of fan service Moses dumped by cold heartless machines barely squeezing out a functional sneak level tells you about the state of the game as a whole. It's storytelling like this that typically would have been conveyed solely through codecs, so it's neat to see it repurposed like this. Even if that's only a product of the new engine and no Fukushima. On the other hand though, while all of this subtlety and complexity is greatly appreciated, it is also hard to deny how shoot-heavy the game can be at times. Like, not a single trank gun made it into my eventual arsenal, what with M4s, shotguns, bazookas, and fucking railguns being widely available. And given that it is already a war zone anyway, you might as well turn the chaos onto them when spotted rather than have them turn the chaos onto you. Sneaking, more often than not, feels more like the quiet before the storm instead of the quiet meant to be perpetuated. Not that I'm complaining. The not quite smooth enough controls are super limitingly satisfying in that classic RE4 type way, where the power fantasy comes from overcoming the fuck, eventually learning to bring the fuck yourself. It's just that all of this does come at the cost of the stealth encouragement. A big factor that goes into achieving said chaos has to do with the engine and the directing style specific to MGS4. You see, normally in games of this era, what you don't see isn't animated. RAM, CPU, gigawatts, and of course the actual time spent animating would all be resources wasted if you ain't gonna see shit anyway. But here, all scenes play out in full, with the camera angles put where they need to be after the fact. This is, of course, because things is entirely mo-capped. Models are rigged as according to actors, so no real resources are wasted. The only real downside to this approach is the fact that you kinda need to act everything out too. Hence why a lot more modern games that use mocap will seem a bit more low-key. God of War went from hand-animated batshittery to down-to-earth talkery because, well, one-on-one conversations don't require you to suspend your fucking actors in midair or do whatever the fuck Capcom had to pull for DMC 5. Yeah. Kojima, though, had infinite money, it seems, and so the cutscenes aren't scaled back at all, utilizing a fucking frame rate shattering amount of assets all moving on screen at once at all times. And sure, the military routines were always quite lavish, but when pulled off on this scale, it adds a sense of density and realism that you don't see very often. And all of this applies to the chaos during play too, as well as to now intensely lengthy people talking scenes. As I said, MGS4 will no longer shy away and cut the codec. It shatters the shot-reverse shot conventions of most PS2 games before it, and puts to shame the often restrained dialogue scenes of modern games coming out after it by straight up having entire scenes of conversation play out in this top-down stage play-y directed fashion, with the camera either being tastefully placed and panned around by the director or freely moved around by you. Again, one big cutscene. Things is very animated with big gestures and postures and great use of body lingo, which feeds into the newly found subtleties I just went over. Hell, even the characters who aren't talking in any given scene will be assigned to do something. Like I said, theater. In a movie, off-cam is off-cam, but on stage there is no cam to be off. If you ain't talking, you best be playing around or walking as to not look dead. Which, again, feels very real, and pairs well with the acting being as boisterous and cheesy as it always is. What with Mount Snakemore, Ocelot finger banging, Raiden physically stopping a giant anime doom whale, and whatever the fuck this insane bit of choreography was supposed to be. Oh my god! Also, can I just say that I dig the PS3 aesthetic? You don't really hear a lot of people talking about it yet, as it's too old to be retro and too new to be fuck, but this game is the poster child of that style to me. The way the hair is rendered in that clearly layered aliased manner, the dimmed but hue-heavy color palettes with thick glow, the high poly but low texture assets, and of course that classic frame rate. Nah, but for real, the lighting especially is what makes it. Using both real-time rendered realistic lighting and artistically rendered texture-based caked-in lighting, which gives off a very handmade look. Plus, this style informs the directing choices too. Characters interacting with assets without clip and spaz became a big thing, as did grade A facial animations, and so you get a lot of slow zooms on people seriously talking and holding a thing. Wow. Final Fantasy XIII, this, RE5, Deadly Premonition, Yakuza 3 all pull this off. Shit's comfy, and I fuck with it. Because this is the last game in the series, after all the other last games in the series, it attempts to round up everything. Only, unlike Kingdom Hearts 3, all of the plot threads and character arcs were pretty much rounded up already or purposefully left ambiguous. Sure, you never really knew what happened to Mei Ling or Naomi other than that they have jobs now, but those two is endings. And so, they needed to open up old wounds. Naomi is now Liquid's lackey, Raiden is a samurai, his GF, Rose, is with Campbell now, Campbell is doing the usual thing instead of retiring, Olga's kid isn't just some kid, but a computer whiz kid, Mei Ling is a big ship girl who helps us with said big ship, Vamp isn't dead and is Liquid Ocelot's lackey, which, I guess that's the next best thing from following Solidus, and he also has a rivalry with Raiden now, which is cool. And even the cast of 3 isn't left alone, with Eva now being an Eastern European Resistance Trenchcoat Army rebellion leader and keeper of Big Boss's corpse, which... ew. And they even name-drop Dr. Matnar of the first 2 games. And it is also revealed that the lovable banter cast were rolling with the evil Patriots all along. While it is true that absolute power corrupts absolutely, there have to be, limits to how far that can go, though. Just look at these real-life Patriots. You got Jeff Bezos, who used to be a rich scumfuck asshole, and so now, as a world-destroying billionaire, he is a mega-turbo scumfuck asshole who treats his employees like slaves. But then, on the tepid flip side, there's Elon Musk, who was just a weirdo dumbass, and so now, as a criminally rich billionaire, he spends his time making Harambe rap songs, tweeting about anime, claiming that he's a socialist whilst clearly not knowing what that is, and fully believing that we live in the Matrix. Basically, he's a mega-turbo weirdo dumbass now, but not someone who's likely to fucking mind-slave the entire human race. That's more Zuckerberg's vacant territory. And similarly, I don't believe that the fun-loving banter cast of 3 could have ended up as villains. reasons. Zero probably would have just retired and become the first to fund the James Bond Museum or something zany like that. Second, I guess fits as the DARPA chief, but it's still awfully retconny to say the very fucking least. And paramedic for sure could have set up a massive medical institution to further science, but it'd probably be something more like, nice. I mean, she's seen Boss and Big Boss. She knows what war do, so I think making her an early expert in PTSD research would have been a much more fitting send-off. And even then, her research center could have indirectly been involved with the clone guys, but I can't see her being deeply involved, all evil and cackling. Shit's done, and people were rightly pissed off about this. Granted, a later game in the future will attempt to re-retcon shit into somewhat sensible territories, at least regarding Zero, but none of that is the case currently, as it comes way too far out of left field. Not any one person is to blame for this either, mind you. As I said, the guy who not only wrote these titular characters, but also served as a general justifications person had left, and given that we post MGS2 now, it's safe to say that the self-filleting snake would have imploded either way. It's also worth pointing out, by the way, that with this much plot build-up, they more or less needed to add weight to its reveals, so the Patriots being just some dudes wouldn't have been enough. Which is also why Eva is revealed to be Snake's surrogate mother. Like, yeah, sure, that could have just been some random lady, but now it has weight. And I like weight. Weight's good, but you need to properly justify it. Not just tack on any old character regardless of what prior purpose they served, which is exactly what's being done here. But hey, at least they acknowledge Portable Ops as being plot canon during all of this, so yay for the Gulag clones, I guess. Anyway, most of the writing is on par with the other games, sometimes even better due to the improved directing. The opening scene, which I can't show because Konami likes to copyright ID it in particular, has a really strong poetic elegance to it, justifying and contextualizing all of the following hollow conflicts. It's just that the codex and shit like the more general sense of context suffer under the shifts in writers. Settings are as vague as somewhere in Europe or the Middle East, and when you're there, it doesn't really have anything to say about them either, which is weird, especially with the Middle East. You'd think that a series critical of the war machine would have at least something to say about the cynical conflicts going on there IRL, but nope. There's big cutscenes with big plot dumps and big writing that's as crazy as Police Knots' detailed couch descriptions, which I love, but it's really only concerned with itself and its own lore, rather than what any of this means within its context. In a way though, the futility of these wars do say something indirectly, being that many wars are just pointless, and that conflicts only become relevant to those in power when there's money to be made. Like, sure, this war is killing millions of innocents and is forcing the locals to become rebels, but no one cares, cause we're only here for liquid. Not to mention that in this universe, the war economy is the only thing keeping things running, which is pretty poignant as well. But yeah, the plot is as it is, as I said near the start. Snake chasing Ocelot to stop him from doing the exact same thing that Snake wants to do, which is stopping the AI. A lot happens, but then it also doesn't really. As I also already said, all characters are established and are simply given conclusions regardless of if they really needed them or not. Except for this one dude called Drebin, who's a gun launderer, and of course our cast of anime tech.
Oh my. Oh Lord. Oh, sweet baby Bingus. Give this boy a goddamn break!
These women's is all you get, as there are no anime terrorists. Osequid has his BB unit, with BB standing for models Kojima thought were hot, and so he scanned them in so he can get up in there real close. They're all damaged, war-orphaned ladies who were recruited gnome-style by Liquid to be turned into batshit crazy mad bitches with cyborg suits, whose complexes and traumas are really their only defining trait. All she could do was laugh as the crows pecked away at her dead family, and so now she laughs, like, a lot. As someone who actually suffers from CPTSD, I'd like to pour out a for this excellent representation. Anyway, the person who tells you about them is Drebin. He's really the only prominent caller in this game, though honestly I could listen to this man talk for days.
She butchered the bodies of the ones she loved, and laughed while she did it. And as she bathed in their blood, It gradually turned from deep red to jet black. To her, it looked like the ink of an octopus.
Yeah. He's super charismatic, shows up all over the place, and seemingly knows everything about anything. Dude really highlights the best qualities of Kojima's comfy writing. Sure, it's all just exposition, but it ain't dry.
It's dripping wet.
He also has a monkey who keeps begging Snake for cigarettes at every encounter, only to finally get one near the end.
Looks like that last smoke will have to wait after all.
Really, this is by far the greatest character arc in the entire game. Certainly a fuck of a whole lot better than...
Working for Meryl and her cool fighting team, all Johnny could do was poop, whine, and dream. To be that badass he would aspire. But alas, nanomachines he did not acquire. And so his bowels spoke only truths of how scary the battlefield is for those too uncouth. But a glimmer of hope would shine past the stains. As the only one able to resist the mind games, he would remain. A bit later, in the European East, Johnny would reveal his face to the team.
Hey, Snake!
A pretty boy he was, though not very clever, though he would save them all by working together. Now, as a sexual harassment suit waiting to happen, he would ask Meryl's hand in the middle of battle. Surprisingly progressive, the roles were reversed, though he was still a man of shit-stained thirst. Oh, poor Johnny. Oh, poor married Johnny.
How the hell did you ever survive 10 years?
I don't think I need to tell you how stupid this plot point is. Like, yeah, I get that they want to give all characters a satisfying end with, like, closure and stuff. And because Kojima, that meant that Meryl would have to marry and be a good girl, listening to her uncle daddy and stop the war fighting, despite that clearly being her passion. And I don't even really mind at all on paper. She should have a better life for sure. But marrying this pisshead... It's kind of funny in a way, being that they were introduced like this. It gives more weight to that legendary scene, but it's not built up very well at all. Machen may have skimmed over some scenes.
Shut up, pussy hole. I did my best.
But him going from comic relief battlefield pooper with no real depth to pretty boy ass grabber with no real depth is really all that he's given. And them falling for each other right before the end is as rushed as it sounds, or is it justified with any build-up at all? He just poops the question and she's like, yeah. I guess he did save her a few times, which is something, but the emotional effects of that aren't ever really mentioned much. Granted, love can be shallow and perhaps seeing his bishy face was enough for Meryl, and the question pooping scene in question is also very well directed, choreographed, and even written, with both of them staying fully in character. It's just that as a plot point, it comes wholly out of nowhere, so it's a bit hard to vibe with, even if you've come at it from all charitable angles, like I just did. Doesn't mean that all of the character closures are bad though. For instance, I love how Sunny, aka Olga's child, is a big whiz kid looked after by Otacon. She ends up receiving a program from Naomi when she fuck, and ends up symbolically combining it with Emma's worm cluster from the end of 2. Having her be the posse world-saving scientist all of them wanted to be. Secondly, Liquid Ocelot is handled amazingly. MGS2 kinda dicked him over in the end, but I feel that making Ocelot the dominant voice was a good-ass call, as he fully embodies the best traits of both, seeing as he's way too handsy, mindfucks at every opportunity, gets his kicks from seeing people suffer, and is a rather boisterous boy. Continuously pulling shit that doesn't really benefit him at all, like fighting Snake in a giant mech, thus clearly only doing it because he knows it's cool, which mirrors the writer's team quite well at this point too. Thirdly, there's Raiden, who actually finna do what he wanted to do in 2, only now it's actually grounded in in-game reality. They show his kid and Rose pulling fan moments in the hospital as he solemnly swears to lay off the ninja bullshit, which is a great, not at all later trampled on way to send him off. And fourthly, there's Snake's arc, in which he slowly breaks down over the course of the entire game. Shit is also great, and gut-wrenching, and above all, really well acted. Something that this game does well as a whole, honestly, is body language. The BB bitches, for example, is all twisted and seductive. Johnny is dorky and puppyish, always tripping and goofing off. Otacon legit looks super timid and nervous, clearly struggling with a lot regarding Sunny. And Raiden is always slumped over and sad, even when he's trying to be edgy with his private dick Flasher's coat. And in Snake's case, this shows in how he starts limping, stretching in pained ways, falling down, gasping for air, and crapping up during gameplay more and more often. What I'm saying is that you can tell what he's going through just by looking at him. And if that wasn't enough, he also gets third-degree burns all over his face, big, massive breathing issues, and needs to take shots to stay alive, as their effectiveness decreases over time. Which is shown in gameplay too by his health and stamina bars going up and down during scenes. It's neat. Not to mention the dude nearly killing himself inside of a giant microwave, where you need to keep pushing button longer, harder, faster, until you legit begin to feel actual physical pain mirroring his. And of course, there's the legendary final boss battle. Remember what I said about the game actually being one big cutscene, in that they both meld into each other with gameplay elements, showing up in cutscenes and the story cinematics continuing around you? Well, that increases throughout the game, with it peaking here. Being that during this final boss, it cycles through all health bars of Metal Gear's past, seamlessly blending the cutscene quick-timey bits into the actual fighting gamey bits, to the point where in the end, you don't even really know if you're still supposed to press buttons or not. But you keep doing it anyway because of how deeply engrossed into this stupid, beautiful, and profound moment in which these four characters symbolically hash it out one last time, with all the references and musical themes being brought back up, you are. It's like they may have taken the most convoluted road possible and fucked up many a character like the entire cast of 3 in the process, but even still it manages some really great cinematic and interactive storytelling, and even gives the closure that 2 never gave, and many for sure wanted. And then Big Boss and Zero show up. Snake, you see, is actually following up on that thing that literally every game in the series has told him to do, and has decided to move on and live his life. Wait, no! But then there, BB is all like, yes, good. Fondling his man hands on him, he tells Snake that he wasn't ever dead, and was just drugged and kept in cold storage. Now, a later game will try to explain this, and in my opinion does so very well actually, but this game does not. So for now, it's dumb. Anyway, then he's all like,
all of this was an evil, cunning plan for me to get Zero. Eva and Ocelot were in on it. We needed you to kill the AI so we could get him. And now, here he is. Look at this catatonic motherfucker. Wow, so evil. Fuck him, right? Let me just murder this old man right here on the spot real casual like. Now, hug me, bitch. Yes, good. Also, Liquid was never actually Liquid. He was still Ocelot. I know, this sounds like I just made it up, and I did, but fuck you, it's fine. Also, ignore Eva losing her shit when she saw my fake corpse on fire despite knowing that it was fake. It's not a plot hole. Nanomachines, my son. To his credit, he does also say that Zero wasn't actually all evil, and that he simply set up the AIs because he's old, and that the AIs themselves figured out that war was the only way to keep society mindlessly churning away. But the way that all of this gets blatant and unceremoniously dumped on you is beyond broken. It makes the character-breaking exposition of fucking police knots look like a well-restrained written work of poetry. It is unchained, unflattering Kojima mind vomit. That's either deliberately trying to destroy what was left, again, or is trying to tie up ties that didn't need tying just cause, well, we're already tying everything up anyway, so we might as well. Also, how did they even get here? Like I know he got free because of the AI die, but I mean literally physically though. Especially Zero. How did he waltz this motherfucker on over here knowing that Snake would be there? It is just beyond stretch. It is gaping. Which is why some people outright hate this game.
disregarding the amazing gameplay, the sleek directing, the drop-dead gorgeous presentation, and its various deep, rich complexities on pretty much all aspects, solely saying, fuck this game, this is dumb, this actively ruins the series. And, yeah, it kinda does. Don't get me wrong, I don't feel this way personally, but it for sure shits on these otherwise great characters. It's all just so surreal and weird that it almost feels as if the game implies that Snake did, in fact, Kurt Cobain his brain all over the pavement, and that this is some sort of life flashing by fever dream. But it can't be, because Big Boss is literally all like, live your life, my boy, on him again. As if that theme hasn't been done to fucking death already. So, yeah, it's a pretty big fucking stain on an otherwise rock-solid game.
Oh, all they can do is repeat the same pattern over and over again.
Now, obviously, with the whole filler arc leading up to it, Fukushima leaving, the big budget, big frame drops, big engine for Sony's new PS3 system, and the game being kinda inconsistent in some areas, to say the very fucking least, it shouldn't come as a surprise that development didn't go too hot. Konami's CEO never really liked Hideo, reportedly, and this game not only took ages, but also cost a fuck ton of money. And so, there was no place for Hideo. There's a few theories as to what this meant. A popular one is that it's about Kojima feeling disenfranchised with where gaming was at the time, being primarily centered around big shooters, and Hideo doesn't like war much, and so it gratuitously being exploited for entertainment without asking any questions may not have sat well with him. Which would also explain the "this isn't FPS but MGS" reveal trailer from TGS 2005. It even made fun of FPS pre-rendered stuff, digging at the superficial nature of how these games were advertised and perhaps even at how shallowly interactive their campaigns could be. Regardless of whether or not if he liked Call of Duty though, there was a definite turn in the currents of the AAA industry and per extension at Konami, favoring mass-produced, fast-marketed, big-money games with little room for experimentation, freedom, or authorship, focused solely on the money, thus leaving no place for Hideo. A short film made in MGS3's engine was even dropped to TGS later, literally featuring Big Boss gunning for and struggling to find his place among the on-set seats of his ever-growing and less familiar new team. It even features our very own player Allegory smugly taking his seat, as if to say that fan demand trumped whatever he wanted to do creatively, which, I mean, yeah, I alluded to as much near the start of the video. As indulgent as MGS4 feels, I don't think it's ever self-indulgence, but rather selfless indulgence. A nega MGS2, giving you exactly what he thought you wanted, and yet still having to deal with corporate meddling as dev time and budget ran up to an all-time high. All of this, though, is to say that MGS4 had to be cynically milked to make up for the indulgence costs and to maybe also match that crazy caught profit, which resulted in a number of projects, being a phone game, an online game, an arcade game, and a database. So, let's talk about them. Shujo Murata took up / was forced to do the Herculean task of writing the Metal Gear database, for he is now the new lore boy. And honestly, shit's fucking mad. It's literally a fully fledged wiki, hyperlinks and all. Only it's not made by thousands of fans, but by a sole one-man guy. You got Gene, Meme, and Scene, aka factual encyclopedia, the characters and how they link up, and the timeline. Despite being very impressively comprehensive though, it was also somewhat controversial as it retconned a lot. Mainly dates in the timeline, and also because it denied my finished MGS4 save file, and so now I am mad. It is neat though, kinda pointless now and even when it came out, but I definitely spent some time digging through it back in the day, especially since I wasn't too familiar with the game's pre-Solid, or really even Solid itself, considering that I had only played the Twin Snakes before doing this retrospective. And hey, I mean, where else can you read about the extreme terrorist Dirty Duck from the Eggplant Gang? And it can also bring you up to speed, kinda, sorta, not really, if you wanted to play Metal Gear Solid 4 without touching any of the other ones.
Sales maximized.
Doing so even further, or I think that was the intent at least, was Metal Gear Solid Touch, developed in-house at Konami by just the weirdest fucking team. Directing it, you see, is Ikuya Nakamura, aka our resident Rumble Boy and character designer for Ghost Babel. And as producer, we have Yoshio Watanabe, who was, of all people, the fucking web designer for Koji Pro. Yeah, the dude who decided when controllers shake and the webman made this one, so you know that all time and expenses were made for this classic masterpiece. Which is a gallery shooter for your iPhone, in which you pop up from behind cover to gun motherfuckers down by dragging a reticle across the screen with finger and tapping it to shoot. As you can tell, it's just a bunch of MGS4 screenshots turned pre-renders, and it looks like it could have been made in about a day using Flash. It follows MGS4's story as well, recounting scenes and events in text in between levels, and surprisingly, it's also kind of fun. Stupidly simple and clearly not a high-effort project, but much like an actual Flash game, I could see this being a neat, fast-paced little time waster. MGS4's sound effects carry over as well, so the guns is beefy, and while it lacks animation, needing to get good at drag fast to shoot good is exciting in the same way that reacting quickly to a sticky dicky is in the actual main game. Really, I wasn't expecting that for a $7 iPhone game. Granted, it is far too simple for its own good, thus not really warranting the high scoreage, but again, as a casual little time waster a la Angry Birds, it really ain't too bad. Also, I love whatever this dumb bullshit is. Hell yeah, video game. Hell yeah. Most importantly though was Metal Gear Online. 3 had an Online 2, but 4 has Online 2, the sequel to 3's Online 1. Taking MGS4's satisfying gun feel and controls to the fucking max, in ways similar to what Mercs mode does for Resident Evil 4. The mode allowed for upwards of 16 people to go completely hog bonkers in an MGS map, either taken from 4, made from scratch, or borrowed from past games, and it was fucking great. Sadly, it's also mega dead. My version of the game doesn't even have the option on the main menu anymore, thus even borrowing us from viewing the title screen. This shit ain't so much games preservation as it is games extinction. If even just the title screen was there as it is in some unpatched OG copies, then at least you could maybe hotwire a fan engine to keep shit going, but as it is, all modern copies and re-releases wouldn't even grant you that. It is wholly inaccessible if it wasn't for SaveMGO.Dingus, a forum of people trying to bring back Metal Gear Online 1 and 2 and seemingly succeeding. I say seemingly because you need to mod your PlayStation and I ain't risking a brick. Cat, what are you doing? And it's also not exactly the most active community, but it's far better than the nothingness Konami seems to desire for its online releases. I mean, hell, they didn't just kill the game, they actually pulled a pachinko on it years before anyone bothered to give a shit and released a coin-op arcade version to Japanese arcades. Granted, with it using VR-style goggles, 5.1 surround, and a live gun controller, I think it's safe to say that this would probably be a fuckload of dumb butt fun, but, you know, they recalled all machines due to low player numbers after only a few years of it being active, so yeah, I think it's safe to say that all attempts to monetize MGS4 beyond just the game itself failed kinda miserably. At the same time, a bit of a shift was happening over in Japan, because Japanese audiences weren't buying games that much anymore, slowly favoring mobile games over console, and the HD PS3 revved up costs big time too. So, catering towards the West and making less expensive games seemed to be the way to go. Konami had already tried this, and failed, with Bomberman Act Zero, but it was still clear that huge big dick ventures like Metal Gear Solid 4 were becoming less of an option. So now, with this in mind, would Kojima finally revolt and take his business elsewhere as he so clearly desired? Or would he take up a higher position at Konami and keep making MGS games for the old ball and chain as the series would become increasingly tired out? Find out now. He did the second one. Fuck everything.